Okay, I think that we are going to go ahead and get started. So I would like to officially welcome everyone to Private Prep's fifth and final Thrive in 30 Executive Functioning webinar, Creating Structure and Using a Calendar. Thank you so much for joining us. The disembodied voice you're hearing is that of Chelsea, me. I'm with the marketing team at Private Prep. We're going to be recording this webinar starting now, so if you have any questions, please make sure to use the chat function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to address your questions as they come up. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce our awesome EF team, Brooke, Jenna, and Melanie, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Awesome. Brooke is actually going to take the lead for all of us tonight. So Melanie and I will mute. We might jump in occasionally, but you're in wonderful hands.
Thanks, Jenna. So it's nice to be here tonight. My name is Brooke Bronstein. I am one of the executive functioning coaches here at Private Prep. Quick little background about myself. I was a learning specialist and a teacher at 2 different schools in Manhattan, using a lot of strategies for different learning issues. First in elementary, then middle school, high school, where we know there's a lot more transitioning and stuff going on. And then I myself went back to school for counseling to really see that social emotional connection that really happens with academics and just life in general. And what I found that's kind of brought it all together now is that all these EF, we call executive functioning skills, is kind of that gap that bridges all of this together. Because when we have these strategies and skills in place and we feel confident in our everyday, no matter what our learning styles are, we tend to just have less stress, have less anxiety, and really feel confident in our lives and in our school and home and everything. So using a planner, using a calendar are just great ways to have these life skills and create these healthy habits. So I found this quote just when I was going through doing this, and it really struck a chord with me. It says, there are dreamers and there are planners. Planners make their dreams come true. And I love this because a lot of times people think, planners aren't for me, it's not, it's not my thing. And, maybe if you have students that have a little bit more of attention issues, they don't want to sit and write things in it. But the opposite is true, because really planners are for everyone. And in truth, when we use these things, use these different strategies, then, anybody can have these skills. And for giving them these healthy habits at a young age, up until any age really, they can use them at different levels for all different things. So I really just felt like this was just an important thing to say. Nobody's born with executive functioning skills. I think that sometimes, there might be more people that are more inclined to want to use these different organizational skills and stuff, but people say, some people might be a little bit more rigid, or they call, type A kind of people, but really anybody can use these. These are learned behaviors. These are learned skills that we teach them no matter what to be used. So really effective little quote there. So also we think of EF skills as, sometimes we use the term like EF, and when I say EF, I mean executive functioning, as kind of like the CEO of our brain, right? The CEO is the person in charge, right? The executive, the top person who kind of delegates all the information. So just like our brain is the CEO of us, telling us and helping us organize, plan, prioritize, do all these different things that come about our day. And just like every good CEO, they need an assistant, right? They can't remember everything. They don't have to remember everything because they need to focus on the things that they need to do. It's not their job to be writing down what times they have or exactly things, because they need to focus on the whole picture of their life and their day or their job. And so like every, person, executive who has an assistant, our planner is our assistant, if you think of it that way. It comes with us everywhere we go. It's there to help us to keep track of things, to manage our time, to prioritize, and just kind of like be our little sidekick. So we can all have it. We can all have it with us all the time. And it's a great tool to have. So how do we do this? So having a planner, there are 2 kinds of planners. There's physical planners and there's digital or electronical planners. There's no wrong or right. There's no, one is better than the other. Just think about your student and your child or children, you might have different ages, different levels, and, just kind of think about what might work for them. I'm going to tell you some pros and cons. I personally use both. You know, I have my phone with me everywhere I go, just, you know, like many of us, and I need to write everything down. But when I come home, I like to have, you know, my laid out planner with my, you know, we'll get into this more, you know, organization with color coding and stuff, and, you know, different things for different parts of my life. So I personally like both of them. I don't think there's a pro and con, but I mean, a wrong or right, but again, different ages, different levels of where we are. So some pros to a physical planner is you can take it everywhere. I know you can take phones, and now we have Chromebooks in most schools, or laptops and everything, and they can come a lot of places, but they can't really come everywhere throughout our lives and everything. And also just, you know, as much as technology is amazing these days, you know, we also have wireless issues, and we have, you know, not every, they're just not as adaptable everywhere we go. So we can take a planner everywhere. We can put it in our backpack, we can put it in our bag, we can bring it upstairs, all around. It's everywhere. Another wonderful thing about a physical planner is the act of writing things down actually helps with memory. It's funny, I had a student today that said, oh, when I write things down, I remember it. I was like, oh my God, bingo, you're right. But it's true, there's a lot of neuropsych that goes into this, you know. We'll get into that, but the act of actually writing, not even typing, and especially not with our thumbs, but, you know, just not seeing it. But when you write something down, it helps with your memory. So while we don't want our students to forget their planners, if they write it, there's a more likelihood that they will remember what they have to do, or something about whatever they wrote. Just a little like way to even prove this point, I guess, is if you ever open the refrigerator and the first thing you think is, oh no, I'm out of milk, right? How am I gonna have my coffee today? And you think, all right, I'll go get it later when I go to the supermarket. And there's no way you're gonna forget that milk, because you can't have your coffee without milk. So how are you gonna go the next few days, right? So you're thinking in your head, of course, I'm not gonna forget. If you write it down later on, if you went to the supermarket, maybe this is now 6 hours later after your, you know, 7 a.m. coffee, there's a way better chance that even if you did not take that grocery list with you, that your memory will spark something, that you remember to get that milk when you pass by that aisle, because you did write it down. So there is, you know, that idea that writing things down does help our memory. Otherwise, you know, within those 6 hours of that day, between when you saw that there was no milk in the morning and by the time you got to the market, there was probably a gazillion things that went through your mind, or you heard, or you saw. So again, just the act of writing helps us remember. So that's just a little aha moment maybe for some of you. If you've been in that situation, I think we all have, that, you know, shows that this really does happen. So writing down, physically writing down is definitely important. So again, think of your student if you think this is something that would help them. Another great thing about an actual physical planner is that you can write a lot more in it. You can make checklists, you can put to-do lists, you can, you know, if you have, say, band one day on a Friday, you can actually write out, you know, don't forget the trombone. No lie, my daughter played the trombone last year. We're happy that she forgot it now, but it was a little loud for us. But anyway, so you can write a lot more in an actual physical planner than if you're, you know, on a screen or on your phone and there's not enough room. But again, what works? Some pros and cons to an electronic or digital planner are just the opposite. What I said before is that they are easy to access. You know, many of us have technology, you know, sitting right here. I have a laptop, I have a phone, I have, you know, a computer, you know, so we have a lot of access to technology these days, and they're with us a lot. But again, you know, kids are in classrooms and it's not, you know, always able to like get on them at the time. They're not allowed to have their phones in class, but again, it is easy to access it all. Another great thing about that is that within that of easy to access, you can share across your devices. So part of what we're trying to do here is help you as a family as well, kind of work together and teach your own children, you know, how to self-advocate for themselves and have ownership of their life. But, you know, we're still in it together. So it's nice when we can share information across devices. If you have like a shared family account or something you might want to work with your student or your child with, like, for example, if my son has a baseball game, I can put it in my phone and it automatically pops up in his phone and my husband's phone. And we all know that we're on the same page. We have something at Friday at 8, we have a baseball game. We don't have to have the conversation. And, you know, we don't have to all physically write it down as well. So just another great part about digital planning across the world. Another great thing is you can set alarms and you can set timers. A lot, especially now when we are all on, many of us are on a hybrid or a virtual kind of situation, and our day is a little bit more just different than it ever used to be. It's really great to have these alarms and timers to help us out a little bit. And you can, say it right into your phone, set timers for homework, and it's all right there with us for our planner, So, technology is amazing in many different ways. Also and these days, as we get a little bit more into like talking a little bit more about our monthly and daily planning, a lot of things you can put one in one time and it can pop up weekly or daily or whatever it is. So a lot of stuff is done for us. And just want to move this so you guys can see. Okay, so again, no wrong or right. Think about your child, your student, and try to scaffold what you think would be right for them. I know a lot of schools have different platforms these days now where they're giving students homework like through the computer and everything. So a lot of times kids will say, I already have it, on my, whatever it is, Google Classroom or Genesis, they all have different platforms and stuff. And that's amazing. We're going to talk a little more about this in a second, but also that is not our only way to do things. We want to be able them to take that information and also put it into their own planners or calendars, because it's almost like learned helplessness, like it's there, but they're not taking it in for themselves. So even if they have their, electronic planners for their school wide, we want them to have ownership for their life. And I'll tell you a little bit more about prioritizing that as well. So how do we use these now? Again, what you're using, whether it's an actual physical one or digital one, they work the same. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the big picture, right? The monthly calendar. And these are the big things that go into a month. A lot of times in a physical one, there's usually like the first page of the month that has kind of like, all the different, like this, like boxes just for each day. And same thing with even a lot of digital ones also. Or you can start inputting in a long time. And this is where the big stuff goes, the things about ahead and those important things. If you were with us last time, Melanie was talking about priorities a little bit. I think she mentioned A, B, and C priorities. I also call them rock, pebble, and water. Rock or A priorities being those big have to things that we have to do in life, right? So no matter what in our day, we have to get those done, right? Those are usually the big stuff. Our B or our pebble priorities being the things we want to do. And those probably still need some scheduling. And then our C priorities or our water priorities are things we like to do if we have enough time, but they don't have to go in this calendar. Those are the extras, right? Those are the we'd like to if we can. So in our big picture, we want to put those A rock priorities in, because usually those are things we know about. We don't have to put school in every single day, but we definitely need to put those big things. And these are like, if you play a sport, you usually know way ahead of time when you have a game or practice, right? And those take up a big chunk of our afternoon and weekends when it comes to prioritizing our time for homework and tests and other things. Holidays, we know about way ahead of time. Usually if we have a holiday, maybe there's no school one day and that's a benefit, or maybe the opposite, that's a holiday that you celebrate and you lose that whole day in terms of getting other things done. Tests, project deadlines. These are things that many teachers will tell you ahead of time and you can put in, and then you can work backwards a little bit about figuring out how to prioritize your time. We don't want to just open up our, Google Classroom and say, oh my God, I have a test tomorrow, because it was on there. So I'm talking about why we want to, rewrite the stuff that the teachers do, but we want to prepare ahead of time for it. And it's really important to put those big things down. Monthly goals, if you have your own goals, you want to put these down and work around them. Activities, appointments, social events like that, again, that we're using our day. So right away, maybe the beginning of the month, I like to do maybe the first weekend of a month, like on a Sunday, sit down and write all those goals in. Put all those rocks in, not goals, but goals also. So those are the big things. Those get in first, and then we work around that, because when we know we have these big things, we can figure out other times. Once we have all that, we want to work on our weekly, our weekly priorities and things that we have to do, and daily. So this is where we get into the nitty gritty. This is our everyday life. And again, a lot of times I think it's a great idea to sit down on a Sunday and put in whatever you can. Again, if a teacher has information on their Google Classrooms or whatever it might be, this is, again, not every teacher is going to tell you have a test, 3 weeks later, but they might start to tell you a week before. This is where we start to put in our weekly work. This is also where our daily stuff goes. So this gets a little bit more intense, right? This is our everyday stuff. It's a little overwhelming at first to be like, oh my God, you have to put everything in, but it becomes second nature when we figure out how to do it. And like I said, everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. Again, depending on their age, depending on the type of student they are. But all in all, what we're going to do is we're always going to write things down. The biggest thing, record assignments, is that, we're talking academics here, but we also are thinking like these are life skills. These are things that we have to learn how to do and figure out how to do all the time. But when it comes to recording assignments, just like I said before, no matter what you have, you want to write it down. If you have a situation, and when I say if a student has a situation that the teachers are giving them their work through the computer, everything should be, I like a physical one for school, that each area has a spot, math, science, social studies, whatever it may be. And the homework goes according to that spot, right? This way you're very aware of every subject, right? It's not just this mush of what it is, but it's very clear what we have to do. The next part really is like, be specific. So really you want to write down everything, right? Again, like I said, if you just know you have math, math. Oh, and you think you might remember what the teacher said in school, but again, a million things are happening between the day, and page 2 to 7 and don't do page 4 is going to forget from your mind at some point. Something just fell in my house. And another thing is I want to point out is that we don't have to remember all of this. So I was saying before, like our planner is our assistant, because we don't have to remember all these little details. Our working memory can only take so much at a time, right? We want to save that working memory. That's what's kind of like here in the moment stuff. We want to save that for the stuff we really need to remember. So for example, if you have math homework, it doesn't matter for your working memory to like take that little space of that time of that memory and remember exactly what pages. What we want, that's there, that can save there. We could take that out and put that here and look at it again for the planner to tell us. What we want our memory to be doing is remember how to do the math and the calculations and the understanding of it. So we want to, keep that open for the stuff that we really need. Breaking down steps. Now, this is, a big part of it. So if we have, going back to our monthly overview, if there's something, say a test due on a Friday, not due, but if you have a test on a Friday that you're aware about, you might want to work backwards a little bit, right? So this is how we break down steps. Like I said, you're not going to just, wake up on Thursday or even, and look at your, in your planner and say, I have a test on Friday, because that would just be too overwhelming. But again, we're going to prioritize our time and we're going to figure out, if I have a test on Friday, what am I going to do to get there? Maybe I'm going to break down my steps into filling out a study guide, finish filling out a study guide a second day, really taking a lot of time to study, and then another day reviewing. So that's 4 different days there. And then if you're looking again at your bigger picture that you've broken down into your weekly a little bit more, you're thinking about the things that you have to do. If you have baseball practice on Tuesday night, that's probably not the night that you're going to finish that big heavy duty study guide, right? Maybe Monday you're going to do most of it. Tuesday you're going to review it a little bit. Wednesday you're going to finish that study guide, and Thursday you're going to take the time to study a little bit more of all of it. So we're breaking down the steps to get to that Friday. And this is a really important part of planning and using our calendar effectively, because this is how we get to our end result and feel successful, and not just knowing that we have to do something, but how we are going to do it and really thinking ahead about that. Another part of this is like creating a time map, which is kind of similar, but I'm going to put actually creating a time map and keeping track of time together a little bit. When you're using a weekly, a daily planner or calendar, it's really important to think about how long things take. And again, I'm just using math as an example. Especially now in the beginning of the school year, a lot of students have new teachers that they're getting used to. They have new subject matter. They have a whole new way of doing school. So things take different times. And this is a good time to kind of start keeping track of, like, if you know how long this teacher, how much math this teacher gives you, and if you struggle in writing and that might take a little longer, whatever it might be, keeping track about how long things take you to do. And I'm talking homework here a little bit more, but for anything. And having a good idea about that, and going back to our prioritizing that, you figure out how long things take you. And if you have room in your calendar or even on electronic, you can figure out time slots. So for example, tonight, if a student came home and they had practice right after school, and then they had between 5 and 10 o'clock at night, they have 5 hours now that they have to get whatever it is done, right? And they want to keep track, maybe go through their different subjects that are nicely laid out in their planner here and figure out how long things take them. Maybe math takes 30 minutes. Possibly they want to give their 20 minutes for that study guide. Spanish is going to take 5 minutes, right? That's super easy for them, just making up numbers. And something else is starting a writing assignment is going to take like an hour, right? So we have, I don't even know the numbers I said, let's say 2 hours worth of work, right? So we want to figure out within that 5 hours, how long things are going to take. We need to have dinner. We still need to shower. And we really want to think about those chunks of time and so it's kind of twofold. One is in the next days and weeks to try to keep track of what they think is going to be. And I don't know how to shut that. Okay. So anyway, sorry about that. So they want to keep track and they want to keep a timeline. Another great thing that you can do here is that I've been recently trying to do with students a lot more so, is once you have those subject matters and you kind of know how long things take, so easy to do, but number them. So say again, they had those 4 subjects to do and they have that 5-hour block. What order are they going to do them in, right? So that Spanish was really easy. Maybe they want to do that first. They're going to write number 1 right next to it. Math is a little bit harder, but they need that time before they have dinner to really be focused. I'm going to write number 2, and then maybe they need a break for dinner, shower, and then do the other 2 things, which whatever they have that hour left, they know how long it's going to take, and they'd rather do that when they're, showered, a little more relaxed. Maybe it's a little, writing is a little more relaxing for them. So that's number 3 and 4. So, keeping a time map and keeping track of how long it takes is really, really important, because that prioritizes our whole time, our whole day. And really, when it comes down to it, I know, again, this year is a little bit different with virtual learning, but we have small, and I say we, like students, we're in it together with them, have not a lot of time to do a lot of things in the afternoons. And we want them to feel confident and feel good about what it is that they have to do and when they can do it. And when they do, back to what I was saying before about this EF being this bridge, it just limits stress, it limits anxiety, and it makes us feel confident. We want to feel good about our work. We don't want to be, have our kids feel like, oh my God, I have to do homework. I have to do this. I'm never going to have enough time. I'm never going to sleep. We want them to feel good about it. We want them to feel successful, and we want them to do it on the time that they feel is good for them and take ownership of this. And the last part, check it off. I mean, there's no better feeling than checking something off, done, done, done. When you're done, to check it off, even if you're coming back and you have more to do, to know what has been completed and what still needs to complete. Also on a digital calendar, you can do the same. There's many different ways to do that. Just really quickly, color coding is a great way to use both a visual, a physical planner, and there's a lot of digital calendars that can do this as well. It might take a little more time to navigate and figure out, but when you use a color coding system, it just makes it, visualization just makes things so much more clear, so much more understandable, and students become kind of, you know, more in control of things when they see it like that. So it can be different, you know, everybody does things a little bit differently. Some people like to color code by their subjects, which I like for students, but some people want all the subjects one, maybe activities a different color so they know how much free time they have to do work. Maybe social life is different, chores, work, responsibility. But again, whatever works for them, and this is something we can talk a little bit more, you know, individually about, but color coding is huge. It also doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to have a whole set of Crayola markers. They can just highlight with different colors if they want. I just think it really opens up our minds to see what has to get done. And then just personalizing it all. You know, again, we want students to have ownership over their life and over their work. So whatever works for them, again, color coding, sticky notes. I also like, just a little side note, a sticky note, if you're using a physical one, like in the actual day of, you could also use like a little bookmark or something, but it's like one less step. It just opens right up to it. Highlighters, like I said, just kind of like going in and highlighting different subjects or different things that they have to do. And then they'll get used to what their system, what they use. Goal setting is a great way to also use a planner if you have a goal, whether it's academic or personal. Putting it in your planner. You know, so many people, like even that quote I said, have things they want to do and they just don't get done because maybe they're not their rock priorities, but they can make them those rock and pebbles by just adding that into their day. And could be something so simple if they want to make, you know, the varsity basketball team over the summer, maybe in their planner, they're just adding in, you know, an extra 20 minutes of practice a day to make, you know, add that into their day. Note section, writing just side notes is amazing. To-do list, I love to-do lists. Stickers, you know, stickers again, don't have to be like cute little stickers. There's lots of like planners that come along. Actually, I have something right here, like with stickers that makes this a lot easier for the kids that say, oh, I don't want to sit and write all that. You know, this already says to do, test, whatever it might be. So again, and this is, you know, helps color code and stuff. So sometimes the students that are even more apprehensive to do this stuff actually are the ones who end up even more successful doing them. And you'd be surprised, kids get really into this stuff once they figure out how to do it. A lot of people don't want to use the planner because if they say they've used it in the past and it didn't work for them, but maybe they weren't using it the right way, they weren't using the right kind for them, or they didn't have the habit set up. So the more you use it, the more you get into it, and the more it just becomes successful for everybody. A few things, recommendations, Jenna and Melanie and I just came up with a few of our favorites. We probably even have some more that I think you sent me some more. Erin Condren is a great one. She has some awesome ones because if you have different age students, she has some really great ones for little kids up until, you know, our age, meaning like all, like when I say little kids to older, meaning they're more intent, you know, some are much just wider spacing and they get a lot smaller, but hers are amazing. Order Out of Chaos, it's actually my favorite that I recommend to a lot of people. I think it just academically has a lot of great spacing. A lot of this is spatial relations. You know, when kids see things in a certain way, it just makes more sense for them. The Mom Agenda is like one that I have. It doesn't, you don't have to be a mom for it. It just has also like a lot of room for different things, especially if you have a lot of activities in your household. Because I think also, just a side little note, if they see mom and dad, babysitters, grandparents using planners, you know, let's be their role model. Let's show them how we do it. So the more we use it, the more, you know, maybe more likely they want to do it. But again, we want to give them ownership to do their own. Clever Fox Planner is another great one. Digital calendars, iCal, Google Calendar, which a lot of us know about. Business Calendar, that's Jenna's favorite. And then Alta Ipsum is one, it's an app, but it's, we actually recently met with the developer of it and it's amazing. It's definitely, it does a lot of these things that I was telling you about that usually people do on a physical planner, like you can color code on it, you can move things around, you can set goals. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think he actually like checks your status of things, right? So there's almost like somebody watching over you too, and it's not mom and dad nagging you. It's somebody who's like giving you incentive to use this and work for it. So awesome app to use. And there's obviously very many more. You can ask us then. Jenna and Melanie, do you have any more that you can think of?
I think all those are great ones. I just want to plug Clever Fox potentially a little because that's one of my favorites. That's a really good planner for somebody who's a visual learner. It's got space to do like a vision board in the beginning, and it's really good about helping kids lay out goals. So it's nice for kind of back to Brooke's quote at the top for the dreamers to really kind of think big, and then it helps you pare it down into the day by day.
Awesome. So I know I spoke kind of quickly as I'm looking, as the time clicks by quickly, but a lot of the day-to-day and the weekly are things that, we're obviously here to help our students with. And like I said, everybody's a little bit more individual in how they do it, but really having a planner and having a calendar sets your child up for success like no other, because like I said before, we want to create confidence, we want to create healthy habits, and these are life skills that all of us use and at some point learned. And I say I wish somebody taught me this stuff when I was younger, because it would have stopped a lot of different stresses and anxieties and even family dynamics in people's homes. So I hope that you can take some of these recommendations, ask us any questions you need, and we're here to help. But definitely help scaffold your children to use a planner, whatever works for them. And even if they say, Mom, I already have, Mom, Dad, whoever, I have, my teacher is posting it, have them redo it, because they need to create their own ownership and prioritize their life as, what works for them. So does anyone have any questions? Do we have time for questions?
We do have time for questions. If anyone has them, feel free to go ahead and enter them in the chat.
Tell me.
I guess while we're waiting, Melanie, did you have anything to add? Not to put you on the spot, just that you had anything.
No, I think Brooke did a very good job in explaining the importance of a planner and the organization, especially the prioritization part. I think just one of the things that Brooke talked about that I really enjoyed listening to, that I totally agree with, is the working backwards aspect of really kind of looking at that overall goal that we're trying to achieve and then breaking it up into smaller steps on how exactly do we get there. It reminds me of the ladder goal activity, when the goal is kind of at the top of the ladder, and for each step you have to put exactly what you're going to do to get there. And that's where a planner can come in to really make it a visualization for those steps. So I personally have a work planner, I have an appointment book, and then I also have a personal planner. So I'm huge on planners. Good job.
It looks like we have a question here. Can you see it in the chat box, Brooke?
I don't see it. Hold
Okay,
on.
I'll read it while you're looking.
I don't want to lose everybody.
Who thinks he has it all figured out, but things slip through the cracks. They're at that age when they want to be independent, so how do I give him the independence but impress on him that this isn't optional to stay organized, especially when you're a travel baseball player, etc.? That's from Jessica.
Well, I mean, things are always going to slip through the cracks, and part of that is just again, like, writing down everything, like we said, recording all that you can and writing as much information as you can as well. I think the other thing too is part trying to find my words here. Making sure that also like being accountable and seeing, going backwards a little bit. So like when things fall through the crack, what is it? Is it a missed homework assignment? Is it a test that he didn't do as well on? And then taking those steps backwards and figuring out what slipped through the cracks. What was the problem, the problem that we have to solve now? Was it that you weren't planning because he was away for travel baseball for 3 days in a row, and when you're there, your mind kind of forgets about school? Or is that, he didn't have everything he needed, or he just didn't write it down and wasn't, prioritizing what he had to do. So I think that really kind of like figuring out what that missed goal was and going back and figuring out what those missed opportunities was. And then in the future, kind of going forward and seeing how we can kind of problem solve and resolve those situations. I think just on that is that, being a travel baseball player, and as our students get older, there are these big chunks of time that are kind of taken away for other things, which is amazing in its own respect. But just, again, back to the prioritizing and knowing, when do I have time for these other things? If he's going to be away for an entire weekend, maybe to talk, just kind of like check in with mom or dad, even though they don't want you doing everything with them, to figure out, when he has some time to do things, and kind of just have that little check-in that they can figure out different times of the day or where they have to cut back and stuff. But definitely going back and finding those times that if it didn't work, what he can do differently in the future. Jenna, do you have any other thoughts? Or Melanie?
I think probably if we talked about this kid specifically, we definitely would. I think one of the keys for parents to avoid nagging, and I know it can be painful, is rather than trying to jump the gun and get kids to notice things before they miss them, is to use any time when something slips through the cracks as an opportunity for you to ask kind of guiding questions that lead your son, I'm assuming it's a son because you said travel baseball, to sort of reflect on what went wrong and what he could have done differently, right? Because if he comes to those conclusions on his own, he's less likely than in the future to be annoyed when you help him remember what he learned.
That's a great bit of advice. Thanks for that, Jenna. Did you have anything to add, Melanie?
The only thing that came to my mind was I'm very big with my students on leveraging interest. And if he is a travel baseball player, my guess is that he's really good at it, and his schedule is very organized maybe when it comes to his baseball. Maybe not, I don't know, I don't know him. But I find that if I'm able to correlate one of his biggest strengths with something that he's maybe slacking in a little bit, I have a better chance of getting the students buy-in, if that makes any sort of sense. So if you're able to relate it to his strengths in travel baseball, because obviously that's a really big interest of his, and how he's organized in that way, it might catch his attention with something that maybe he's less interested in, which might be planning for school. I hope that I articulated that okay.
I love that, Melanie. I'm going to piggyback on that as well. And I'm going to keep using baseball as an example because I actually have a travel baseball player myself, and my own son. And it's something we actually just spoke about, but we were talking about leverage is also using that understanding. So like baseball, everybody thinks you just have to hit the ball, and that's what makes you a good player, right? Or hit and catch. But in reality, they need to do a lot of other things. They have to train to maybe be stronger. They have to run fast to get to the base. They have to work on speed, agility, and stuff. So also using that analogy, I'm using baseball as an example, but it could be for anything, to say, you don't just like wake up and get 100 on a test because you're good at math or something. There's all these different things you have to do. You have to turn in your homework. You have to, ask teacher for questions. You have to go for extra help. There's a bunch of different things you have to do to feel confident in that academic area, just like you have to do, for baseball, where just like Melanie's saying, just that relatability factor as well. And I think sometimes that's a nice aha moment, especially for older students who have kind of got to the point where sometimes they say, I'm good at this and not at this kind of thing. But like to understand that there's lots of different aspects to everything. So I love that, Melanie, of just that relatability as well.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. So I'm just going to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Brooke, for leading this. And thanks to our attendees for joining us. We'll be sending out an email with a little more information, some extra tidbits and resources. So keep an eye out for that, and keep an eye out for more webinars from Private Prep. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Thanks.